All right. Hello and welcome to the Left Wing. Once again, the person talking to you right now is not PJ Whitehead. This is John Cooper. Joining me is Dev from the channel, multimedia channel
from the
Endeavorance. I know you're on a lot of places now.
The omnipresent force.
There we
is,
go.
I think, how I would refer to it personally.
Perfect. So again, guys, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Left Wing. We're going to be talking about a lot today. Epstein is the talk of the town in every way, shape, or form. So we're definitely going to get to that. I also wanted to touch, as much as that's what everyone's talking about. There has been a lot of interesting stuff coming out about Zohran, and specifically his meetings this week with various we'll call it capitalists. And he's meeting with Jeffries today as well. I haven't heard any news that's come out about that, but we'll see. And then also there is mounting pressure against Israel right now that I think is actually noteworthy and wanted to talk about it. But before we get to all of that, Endeavorance. We always like to introduce our guests by saying, what got you into doing what you do here with political content creation? It is a thankless job. We don't get paid much, if at all, and it is a hell of a lot of work. What got you started doing this, and why do you keep doing it?
I want to first say, on the topic of not being paid very much, I wish that I was paid at whatever rate people think content creators who post like mid-tier hot takes about politics make. Like, I don't know why there are people who think that these leftist content creators are on like a payroll of any kind. Like, who is going to pay a leftist at all? But who's going to pay a leftist to put a message out there?
Yep.
Because anyone who has money to pay someone isn't going to want the message that we would put out there. So that said, I kind of got into this by falling backwards into it. So I've always just been reading a lot of what's going on around me to have an understanding of the world. I started by making just a blog. It was originally just a blog called What's Going On. And that eventually, you can kind of see the through line there into my main show is called Stuff Keeps Happening, which is a newsletter, podcast, video, whatever, weekly recap kind of show about just like everything. I didn't initially intend to be talking about politics. In fact, I initially didn't focus on it at all and was much more focused on gaming, technology. Really, this is where it kind of like fell in. I am a veteran of the tech field and have worked in big tech for a long time. I've since pivoted to doing content full time, but having been in tech and having had a functioning soul, it was very draining. And I wanted to use my whatever platform I had to help educate people a little bit about like just how wild these tech companies are and just how destructive they can be. And that is just inextricably linked with politics, especially now, right? Especially with this administration and all the tech oligarchs trying to buy their way, successfully having bought their way into power. So that was kind of the like ever so slightly ramping up until then. Suddenly now I've spent the past several years talking about Gaza. So here we are.
Whenever people like commented on my post, like, "Oh, you're just getting paid to spread this" or whatever, I feel like the the line from sometimes I start talking and I forget it. I don't know exactly what the line is, and I hope I remember it. But from the movie No Regrets, that movie with the Millers, where he's paid? Like, where they're like, yeah, you guys are getting paid. Like that's what I always feel like. I'm like, I don't get paid. That's untrue. I get paid a little tiny bit of ad revenue from TikTok. Everything we do on here, like we basically get nothing for it. It's very funny when people say that. So yeah, most of the people who do this full time, they left a far more lucrative job, like Dev here, to do this because this is what they found was important to them. That doesn't mean they're always right. We can be wrong. Everyone can be wrong.
But been right.
But you can pretty much, if someone is on the left and making content and they aren't like a household name like a Hassan Piker, they are solely doing it for the love of the game. And that isn't even a shot at Hassan. I think he's pretty straightforward with what he believes as well. But anyone on our level and below, they are not doing this for money. We're doing this because we are at least trying to help the world be a better place.
Not to like over index on this subject, but
yeah.
as someone who is now I do not, this feels very weird. Referring to myself as a creator still feels weird to me. But as someone who is like a creator and who's like seeing this through the lens of business, in addition to through the lens of like doing this because I want to, I look at other creators who are those like, you know, multi-million follower, whoever, and like there is a stark difference, right? Like there is a tier that you hit that it just gets exponentially wilder. People who like I've seen on my For You page over and over and didn't think that they were like rampantly successful will then post a video from within their house or something, and I'm like, what the hell? What? How could you do that?
Yep. It's why I really wish that like I did makeup tutorials instead of this, because if I had the numbers that I have, but at least I like talked about something that was advertiser friendly, I would still make it. Like I could probably do this full time. I wouldn't be rich or anything, but I probably could do this full time. But talking about politics, especially as you said, no one wants to pay us to talk because they don't like what we're saying, except for George Soros. He does sponsor the show occasionally. As you see, he just paid us $1.99. So thank you, George.
He actually buys my breakfast every single morning.
That's very nice. That's very nice. He's a very nice man. People should really get to know him. But well, anyway, let's get into, speaking of nice men who want to take away the money from rich people. We'll start there with Zohran on the rise. We will talk about Epstein. I don't want to jump right into that at first.
I was like, given that Epstein was the thing that you said on the outset, are we talking about the same guy here?
It's called burying the lead, Dev. You got to keep people interested in watching. But
I keep digging up these leads. Okay.
I want to talk about Zohran a little, and we've talked about Zohran before on the show. I'm sure. Have you been very closely following Zohran and everything with his primary and the general?
I feel like it's not really been unfollowable. I haven't followed very closely. Like I'm not following beat by beat, but I'm definitely keeping abreast of the overarching situation and what major players are doing.
Yeah. Where do you live, by the way?
I am I'm in the Mid-Atlantic.
Mid-Atlantic. Okay, so you're at least East Coast, if not Northeast.
Yeah.
Because like I live in Philly, so like we're as close to New York as you can get without being New York. Like we have like a very much little brother relationship with them. So what's going on in New York politics affects Philly politics, but not so much the other way around.
But I mean, New York politics definitely sprawl out. The East Coast specifically is just so tightly packed, and New York City it's unequivocally like gigantic, and well, not unequivocally, but it's unmistakably gigantic, and its influence is also gigantic. So yeah, it's a meaningful election. It very much does seem trivializable, right? You can say like it's a mayoral election for one city, right? But like that one city has a bigger population than like some states, and it's a big deal.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us to the question at hand here. I want to ask and answer: is Zohran the next big thing? Because I think there are arguments that can be made on both sides of this. Because on one end, what you're talking about here, New York is, for all sake of argument, the capital of the United States of America. You know, I know the political capital is in Washington, D.C., but like culture doesn't get stirred in Washington, D.C. The big deals don't get made there. The financial capital of our country is New York. The cultural capital is at least partially New York. You can give some credit to L.A. or maybe even an Atlanta, but like Chicago. New York, Chicago as well. But I'd say at least in terms of cultural impact, probably not as big. You probably know who the mayor of New York City is. The average politically engaged American knows who they are at any given time. Maybe they know about the mayor of Chicago. Maybe they know about the mayor of LA if they're particularly in the news sort of people. But you know, the mayor of New York is really the only mayor that can successfully launch a presidential campaign potentially. You know, that's where we're talking.
Pete Buttigieg.
But Pete, it wasn't successful. Like he did. He
literally campaigned as Mayor Pete. I mean, okay, but
when he
being a
eventually
dick,
successfully runs, it won't be because he was last mayor. He's added more to his resume because he needed more.
Absolutely. I'm not a Buttigieg boy.
Yeah.
Like he's not my guy. But like, it's also undeniable that the dude was punching way above his weight.
He was
in that election. But so the reason I throw out Chicago is because when I'm thinking when I think of like cultural, I'm not really thinking about like household political names. I'm thinking of like musicians. But,
okay, yeah.
That's why I was saying Chicago. But okay, so is Mamdani the next sort of like phase or the next like big thing for within what context? Let's narrow that down.
Is he someone who will become a standard bearer for the left side of the aisle in one way, shape, or form? And I would say this: is he closer to being the next AOC or closer to being just a flash in the pan that we never hear from again? And that's kind of where, or even just like an average New York mayor, you know,
it depends a lot. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I personally think that he has all of the chops, and we're in a more of a wait and see period to see how he does. He still hasn't won the general election yet, so there's still hurdles to get there. But I think that if you're looking at him like a prospect coming out of school and you want to draft, looking at the draft status of him, you're like, oh, he's got all the tools. You know, he's got a sub 440, like he's got it all. Can he put it together on the field is kind of where I'm at. But where are you at with him?
I think it depends a lot on the outcome of the election. Obviously, but not in the way that I think people would be hopeful for. I think if he loses, he becomes a martyr. I think if he loses, that's the end of the Democrat Party as we know it. Which like they're already like ruined at this point. Like for context, like the Democrats are already currently, as of literally right now, with actual concentration camps constructed and operating on U.S. soil, the Democrats are less popular than Republicans. That is just where the numbers are right now. So given that there is now a lightning rod candidate, and it has sparked a lot of participation from the exact demographic that the Dems need right now, and we are actively watching them essentially lay the groundwork for him to lose. Like they are actively doing everything they can to prevent going in on him. Like they're trying to just hold the line as much as they can until there's a semblance that Cuomo might be able to actually challenge him, and then they're going to try to endorse Cuomo. And if all of that happens and he ends up losing, that is it. This is like how many times can it happen? You had Bernie, where people got really excited about him and then got so pissed at the Democrats for screwing him over that some people who voted Bernie literally voted Trump. Like that phenomenon there of basically people saying, I want something different. Bernie is different. If you're not going to give me that, I'm going to go with the other different. And then, you know, the number of times that we've seen AOC get snubbed on positions in Congress. And then the amount of hate that gets lobbed at anyone left of the most center person imaginable in the Dem party. So basically, you know, the squad, all of the stuff surrounding them. And so to have another guy come up to so handily win the primary, and then to already be in a situation where two different people are running as independents just to try to thwart this guy. If it works, if they thwart him, I cannot blame a single person for being like, I'm done with this party. I'm fully done with this party, right? I think we would instead see a renewed interest in an actual new left-leaning party. And I think it wouldn't work well because that's not really possible in the US. Yeah. That said, if he wins, honestly, I think it's going to be pretty boring. And I don't mean that to be a downer or to say that it's not going to be generally better or good. I think he's going to hit a lot of roadblocks because of just inertia, especially inertia in what is the financial capital of the US. There's a lot of big movers that don't want to move, and that's going to be hard. So I think if anything, him winning is the most likely path towards him fizzling out, because him winning means that he then has to deliver to actually be taken seriously. And he is going to be up against so many headwinds from especially the right. The right's never going to let up on the headwinds against him. And the Dems are already giving headwinds. So if they don't want him in office, they're not going to want him in office once he is in office. I don't see them giving him an easy time. I don't see them looking the other way. I don't see them giving him the same amount of grace that they've given Cuomo, right? Who, like, all of them were like, you need to resign in disgrace. A couple years later, they're like, you need to run for mayor of New York to save us. Like,
it's incredible. So first of all, I'm so glad you brought that point up of, hey, not only does he need to win, but he also has to be pretty wildly successful.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to be fighting an uphill battle the entire time. And if he even chooses the wrong policies to start, it could be catastrophic for him. He has negative leash, and he has to earn even to get leash. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, Dev, some of the policies that he has touted, such as rent freezing and free buses, are two policies on the progressive side of the aisle that personally I want to see tried out more, but also I have concerns about from an economic perspective. I'm not sure if they will be effective. And they kind of have to be if that's what he goes with first. I'm kind of actually hoping, like you said, it's a little bit more boring to start so he can earn the ability to get more creative and drastic. Because if he goes out guns blazing, there are politicians that, like Donald Trump, he came out guns blazing. And we're starting to see why that might not have been a good idea for him. But he can do that. He's built up the cachet. He has the brand. He has the support. Zohran kind of has that. But we saw with AOC when she tried to do that in Congress, it didn't really go all that well for her in terms of making actual accomplishments happen. And she had to play ball in order to advance her own status and ability to gain that power. And that was my dog, guys, if you just heard the bark.
I'm very happy about it.
But it's something that we always have to work 10 times harder on the left because of the headwinds that we're up against. But all that being said, I think he's got what it takes. And I think you actually made a really good allusion to Mayor Pete earlier in the show, where you'll look at the guy and his policy almost doesn't even matter. He just has it. He has the Riz. He has the smile. He has the charisma. He gets across that he genuinely cares. And again, these are two people that have drastically different policy positions, but both of them I would go to bat for any day of the week, because I believe that they give a shit and they are S-tier communicators. And to me, that's all I really can ask for in a politician. Give a shit and be able to communicate why you're doing what you're doing to people. And if you can do those two things, as long as your policy doesn't absolutely suck dick, I'll get behind you. Fortunately for me, with Zohran, most of his policy is fucking awesome, and I absolutely love that.
So I think you hit on an important subject here, which is that, like, politicians and policymakers are very different concepts. A good politician is someone who, like you said, can communicate, can explain their positioning, and can get people to get behind them. That's literally the only thing that a politician is supposed to do. Everything that comes after that is optional, because you at least in the US system, you win the election and then then you've won the election and now you do whatever. But to actually win the election, you need people to be behind you, and to have people be behind you, you can't like be the world's most awkward on stage presence, which is why people were like, can we please get Elon Musk off the stage? But like with Trump, like Trump does that, right? Like he is a horrendous like waste of carbon, but he's a horrendous waste of carbon that goes on stage and gives a rallying cry, gives a reason, however dumb, gives people a reason to cheer. And there's so many people right now who are like, don't cheer. That's uncouth. And everyone's like, okay, well then what are we supposed to just sit here quietly while you tell us a sermon about how we're all bad and should pay you campaign finance donations? Like, what is going on? There's really few or very few people, especially in the Dem party right now, who are leadership figures. You've got like Gavin Newsom, who's talking a lot. You've got, I don't actually remember his name, but the governor of Illinois.
Pritzker.
Yeah. You've got him. You've got Mom, obviously, Mom Donnie, AOC. And honestly, yeah, like Buttigieg has been making a lot of appearances recently. And like, that's kind of it. And nobody that I just mentioned is actually like capable of getting anything done. Like no one that I've mentioned. Gavin Newsom can like send funny tweets and be tall. And that's kind of all he can do. Right. Like other than that, he's already impotent. He's already not able to stop the government, the federal government, from sending the literal military into one of the largest cities in the country. So if you can't do that, what do you, congrats, you're just tall now. The man's really tall. But then you've got like
the man looks like he plays a president on TV, and that honestly is most of his appeal.
It's meaningful, seriously, but that's so meaningful. Quite literally, I remember learning in history about presidential elections from before the radio and TV, and people went based on just a published photograph, if that, of the politician. They were like, I like his facial structure. He's got good bones. I'm going to vote for him. And that's not an exaggeration. And that's still how a lot of people vote today. They make a snap assessment of how someone's appearance is, and they paste an entire fictionalized person on top of them, and that's who they go with. And it happens to creators as well. I'm sure you've experienced like people just making assumptions about all of your viewpoints because of like one detail about you or whatever. And that's just how people operate. So they see presidential material, right? Buttigieg grew a beard. He looks better with it. He looks like he could be more of a man coming down to lay down the law kind of guy. Like that's strategic. It's that strategic. I just don't know where we find that right now, because like, again, like all these people are also useless. Buttigieg literally doesn't have a position of power right now. Gavin Newsom can't stop the president from deploying the military. AOC has been snubbed seat after seat because the Democrats don't want her to be successful. Mom Donnie is actively fighting against the Dem war chest as the Dem primary victor. And so it's like all of these people are fighting massive headwinds, massive uphill battles. That doesn't set them up to be the new leadership,
It's interesting. So I've been saying this. I've said this on the show a couple times, but I've been saying this since 2016. It's something I realized immediately when Donald Trump won the presidency was, oh shit, all of the rules that we thought we knew are out the window now, because we have coalesced so much power in the presidency that they can basically do whatever the fuck they want. And Donald Trump term one didn't do that. Donald Trump term one, he did damage, don't get me wrong, but it was relatively normal damage for a Republican president. But term two, he's doing what we kind of thought he would do in term one, and just be a complete fucking wild card, because he didn't play by the rules. He isn't the chiseled career politician that we expect to be president. And what that made me realize is, oh shit, they put a flaw in the Death Star. They had a perfectly indestructible imperialist machine, and they got greedy, and they built in this security flaw where if someone could just get enough populist support, they can destroy the whole thing. They can use it for good. Unfortunately, the person who demonstrated that was an evil monster who only cares about himself, but that doesn't mean that the opposite couldn't happen. And I think that we are closer now, maybe than we ever have been, to actually seeing mass systemic change in the United States of America because of all the power that the presidency has. Now, this topic is about Zohran, and Zohran obviously cannot be the president of the United States because he was not born here, which is a dumb fucking rule in my opinion, but it is the way it is. However, I do think that one of the reasons that Zohran works and has the ability to be the next big thing, even though he can't be the president, he'll never be that for the party. But those headwinds that you're talking about that have traditionally blown against him and people like him, he's kind of Teflon against it. Everything that's thrown at him, I don't know if it's just because he is so charismatic and likable as a person, or because the people fighting against him are more incompetent than they have ever been, but it's just not working. There was an article in Politico that came out, it was either this morning or yesterday, where he was meeting with, power brokers in New York, business power brokers in New York City, and they're coming away impressed. They're coming away liking him. Now, not everyone, but it was a generally good meeting for all the reporting that I heard about it. And that's not something you expect from a democratic socialist who says he wants to seize the means of production. Now, a cynic might read that as saying, oh, Zohran, kind of as you said, is going to be boring and play ball and not accomplish all the things that we want because he's only in it for himself. And we have seen rug get pulled out from under us by supposed left-wing populist politicians, John Fetterman, that just completely end up fucking us over. But I don't see that with him. I think he might play ball, but I think he's going to stick to these roots, similar to how AOC has. And the caricatures that they're trying to make of him, of this radical Islamic communist, just don't work, because he puts that smile on and he looks like this dude that you know.
Yeah, he's hot.
He's attractive. I'll say he's not Luigi, but he's an attractive man. But it's not even that, like, he's attractive, but it's like boy next door. It's like he just looks kind of normal.
We'll go with cute.
Cute works. No, it does work, because it's hard to paint a guy who looks cute with a charming smile as some radical Islamist who's trying to destroy the heart of the West. It just doesn't work. And on top of that, Cuomo might be between Cuomo and Adams, they are in an incompetence off, the likes of which have never been seen. The fact that they're both competing here, no one's on the same page. It honestly feels like there's an open net, and all we have to do is get across the ice and push the puck into the goal.
So I love the images that all the various networks are trying to use of Mamdani to make him look scary. They like put him with like a red tinted background. They like try to make him look like a communist leader or whatever, but it just like, it's his color and he just looks good. Like it just makes him look rad. It looks like a movie poster. And so it's like, it didn't work. The guy just looks cool. But so the thing, I think that Mamdani has the heart that a lot of people are looking for right now. We have experienced absolute insanity in our political landscape since the start of the 2016 election, basically. And it's been a decade of crazy. This is just not how things used to be. This is not how politics were. It was not the everyday conversation. It was not our politicians constantly trying to make headlines and do the craziest thing possible to be the center of attention. It's just not how it was. They wanted to be out of the way. They didn't want people to see what they were doing. They wanted to be quiet and like every once in a while pop up and be like, hi, it's time to vote for me again, and then go back to being quiet. And for the past 10 years, we've had the exact opposite of that. And people are tired, obviously. People are tired. People are barely getting by, and they just want hope. And what they're looking for is someone with a freaking soul, someone who they can be like, that's a human being and not just a sundowning old man, for the first time in however long since we've had a not sundowning old man as our president. And Mamdani has that. I think that he actually is a good dude. I don't get a bad read from him. I am not worried about his intention. It's more, as you said, Trump got into the presidency and proved that you can fuck things up with it by not really playing by the playbook. Up until his presidency, it was largely based on pinky promises and good vibes. It was like, all right, we're all at some level, statesmen. We're enriching ourselves and diddling people and having a bunch of foreign soil assassinations that we're not reporting, but we're generally statesmen. That's not Trump at all, right? And so he came in and just started saying, like, I don't care if it's not precedent. I'm the president, so I'm going to do whatever. And I'm sure he doesn't know the difference between those two words. But what you say about, he proved that you can fuck it up in one direction. I'm skeptical that it can be fucked up in the other direction as easily, especially just because there is not political will to radically swing even just away from where we are right now. People want stability. I believe people want stability more than they want massive change, because I think the people who want massive change are not the ones who have much political power right now. We are still living in a boomer run world, and we are still living by the playbook that they have been employing. And until there are enough people in high seats within Congress, we need an actually capital P progressive minority or majority leader, whip, and in House and Senate, before the president can just get away with doing all the things that Trump's doing right now. Trump can do all the things that he's doing right now because the entirety of the Republican Party is in lockstep behind him and enabling him. Not just that, but the Supreme Court, all the judges that McConnell sat throughout his tenure. There are so much political will. There's a 50-year-long plan from the Heritage Foundation that has built month after month after month, creating this political will and political capital to make these changes. And now it's all paying off at once. To do it in the opposite direction would be met immediately with, well, hold on, because the previous administration did a lot of radical changes. I think it's important that we take a measured approach here and be cautious about what we change, because we don't want to just keep pulling the rug out from people. And that has always been the issue, right? Like when Obama got into office and it was like, fucking finally, people voted for meaningful change, and he ran on like fixing healthcare. And then he just took concession after concession after concession after concession, and then eventually passed a very hampered version of what he actually ran on and what people actually wanted, despite there actually being a public desire for a massive change. But in the actual Capitol, there just wasn't the desire for that. There never was to begin with. And so he had to capitulate. And that's just the sort of functionality of the U.S. government. It's the ratchet effect, right? Like, this isn't groundbreaking. It's just the right has essentially a penchant to take the flag and run. And then when the left gets a hold of the flag, they're like, well, let's just plant this down and let's just take a second, take stock of the situation. And oh shit, they took our flag. And then yeah, just that on loop forever. So my concern is less about Mamdani being a Fetterman or being, too self-serving. Maybe that's me being naive, but I just don't get that read. My concern is that there's just, while there may be some good actors right now, there are so many more, not even bad actors, just non-actors taking up seats. And those non-actors give that power to the ones who are bad actors.
So I don't disagree wholeheartedly with anything you just said. If everything you just said comes to fruition, I'll sit there and be like, yeah, seems about right? However, I haven't given this stump speech in a little bit on the show, so I'm going to give it again since you're a new guest, you haven't heard it. I think the times they are a-changing. Because what you just said, we still live in a boomer-run world, well, that gets less and less true literally every day that goes by. More of them die. And who's here to replace them? The millennials. The millennials, who are the most progressive generation in American history. They are the first generation in decades that have gotten more progressive as they've gotten older. And the boomers have maintained political power for so long because they were such a massive cohort. Well, they're starting to die, and not all the wealth is going to trickle down to the millennials, because many ways that they've stopped that from happening. But a lot of millennials who have been working class their whole lives are going to come into enough money that would traditionally have turned them into the good little cog capitalists that their fathers and grandfathers became, but it's going to be too late for them. They're going to be getting that money in the 50s and 60s as opposed to their 30s and 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be a little bit of a different atmosphere than, say, when Obama took office. We also have more self-proclaimed democratic socialists in Congress right now than literally any other point in American history. And I would wager, Dev, that is going to massively increase in 2026 when there is a massive blue wave, but not just a blue wave, but an outrage against the established moderate Democrats who, as you said, are just holding on to their seats and doing nothing. That's kind of what Zohran represents to me. He represents, oh shit, this guy came out of nowhere and took out Andrew Cuomo, who, obviously has his weaknesses, but in terms of New York politics has been the king or a kingmaker for my entire lifetime. So I think that the path is there. And again, I'm not saying it's the most likely path, but I'm saying that it has never been more likely since, I don't know, the fucking 1920s that we could actually see a legitimate change in the way the American economy is set up and manufactured. Do you think I'm crazy?
I don't think you're crazy. Everything that you just said makes complete reasonable sense, right?
Mm.
I wouldn't even disagree with the assertion. My counter argument would just be that and maybe this is just me being pessimistic. I try to not just be objectively pessimistic, but I feel like while there is a lot more progressive will,
mm-hmm.
there are also more literal monarchists in the White House.
Yeah.
Than we're probably used to having,
and the country
more
than I would have thought. 10
for those who
ago.
are not aware, monarchy is on the rise in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
That is not an exaggeration. There are monarchistic thinkers who have large platforms and the ear of advisors in the White House. So monarchy is on the rise. That's niche. It's still niche, to be clear. It's on the rise. It's still niche compared to the Nazism MAGA stuff, but it's there. So while there is more progressive, and I'm not even really, I don't think that the monarchists are going to fuck up progressive progress, but there's essentially the party that is whatever you want to call Republicans right now, the conservative, Nazi, fascist, whatever you want to label them. And if you are not specifically okay with throwing your hat in the ring with the party that's actively detaining abuelas while wearing a mask and throwing them into a detention facility, if that's not your political alignment, you have one other option, right? And so there's this massive breadth that the Dem party is trying to tackle right now. And because they have horse blinders on, they can't see the progressive side. They just think that they can pick off centrists. But the problem is they already have the centrists. There aren't more centrists. The only centrists left are the ones who say they're a centrist and then vote for a literal fascist. So either they're not centrists or they're just deeply ill-informed, and you can't get people who are deeply ill-informed. You can't convince them to come to your side. They've already been ill-informed. So the only actual people left are those who feel completely left behind that don't fit in either of these categories. And it's not just, left, right, obviously. It's left, right, up, down, forward, back. There's so many angles to the political spectrum, and Dems are just trying to be the middle dot right now, which doesn't make any sense and does not align with anyone's outlooks. So you've got a party who pretty much is set up to fail to form a coalition, because you have a party that should be multiple parties working together in a parliamentary coalition, but instead is trying to act as a single party that does not have a message, because they can't decide if we should bomb brown people but with trans flags, or maybe here's an idea, maybe don't do either.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're arguing about that instead of having any like actual meaningful policy movement. I had a point here.
It actually sounded like you were kind of starting to circle around to everything is static right now, but there's a large group of people who are just disaffected, and I think that is the secret sauce that Zohran is tapping into here. He did a very similar thing with Trump. The people who voted for Zohran weren't all like us, there was a lot of us, but there were a lot of just normal fucking people on the streets of New York City excited about him. And that's what I think, why I think there's such a chance, because people, as you said, they do want stability, but we've been unstable seemingly for so long now that it's like, shit, I kind of want something I just believe in. That's something that gets my heart moving.
I would love
that's
that.
What we can provide here.
I think the point that I was eventually trying to drive to was largely you still have the largest cohort of Dems, which are the brunch liberals, right? The people who are like, if Kamala won, we'd be at brunch, right? Like that crew. That is still by far the largest cohort in the Dems. And because progressives feel so unwelcome, because literal leadership, I believe it was Hakeem Jeffries, I think, said something along the lines of like, we don't care about the Democratic Socialists or the DSA. He's like, we don't care about them. It's like, what are you doing? Like you can't put a line in the sand that says anyone further left of here doesn't matter, because there's a lot of people there, but there's a lot of people who feel disaffected, and they are not going to be easily motivated to stop being disaffected just because of a single candidate, especially if they don't live in New York City. We're seeing a lot more people primarying the really boring candidates, but we also saw the Dems oust David Hogg from the DNC for just suggesting that we should primary ineffective Dems. So like they specifically don't want to risk their own tenured seats. And that is the playbook that they've been playing off of this whole time, is tenure matters more than literally anything else. Like, does not matter your policy, does not matter your popularity, does not matter your age or cancer status. Tenure matters more than anything else. And I know that boomers are dying off. That playbook is still in effect. And there are so many deals that have been made that someone has to pay up on. There are so many political deals that Pelosi has made that she's been making good on, even after she stepped down from Speaker of the House, literally whipping votes from the hospital to prevent AOC from getting a seat that she promised to somebody else in a political deal a while back, right? Like, there's no reality in which an actual thoughtful person, a custodian of the government of a country of this scale, would be like, I think the best person for this job is the 80-something-year-old guy with cancer, and not the upstart firebrand who specifically wants to do oversight on an aggressive administration. No, that's not what happened. It was they wanted to make good on the deal that they had already set up. So my concern is a lot more about the friction from within the existing party. And I think what I'm getting at is, I don't think that we are 1 or 2 election cycles away from meaningful change. I think we are more election cycles away from meaningful change. I think it would be sooner that we see action happen by way of social and economic violence, insofar as like strengthening unions. Like, I feel like at some point, given the amount of disaffected people, given the amount of pushback, given the amount of headwinds, and given the obvious excitement for people like Mamdani who are being tamped down, citizen coalitions that force the hand of the government to take meaningful steps, I think, is the more likely vehicle for meaningful change right now than electoral politics, purely because of that ingrained friction in the Dem party. I think we'll see. I would love to see a Mamdani victory in New York, and I would love to see his policies go into effect and have meaningful impact, people need to feel the impact of the policies, and it's going to be a crapshoot, because if things do get more expensive first and then quality of life gets better, that's not a good order of operations, right? Like, people are going to remember things are more expensive, and then they're not going to notice an improved quality of life. That's exactly why we have Trump, right? Things got more expensive under Biden despite an improved quality of life. On average, right? That doesn't fit everything. And that's what I'm afraid of, is like, it's so fickle. I have that hope. I have that desire to see that happen. I don't have trust really at this point that it's going to stick around. And I trust more in unions, mutual aid, and just like citizen coalitions to make meaningful change. I think that's my more or less approach on it.
I think everything you just said is fair and true. The one thing I would add is that 2026 is going to tell us a lot about what the outlook is in terms of timelines. Because if, whatever you want to call us, progressives, leftists, DSA member, whatever you want to call us, have a Tea Party like a 2014 Tea Party like midterm where they kind of take over the Democratic Party internally, we've now seen the Tea Party coalesce into this Donald Trump term, essentially. Like, that momentum that started in the 2012 loss ended them here. And
man, these Tea Party guys are pretty wacky. Fast forward a decade, man, these Tea Party guys are the entire party.
Exactly. And if you were sitting as a Republican, even a more, far right conservative Republican in 2012, you're probably thinking a lot of the same doomerism that we are right now. And look where they got with, and I cannot stress this enough, the most incompetent motherfucker at the helm that you could possibly imagine. Even if we had a halfway competent person, they could do a lot more for the cause than Donald Trump has even been able to thus far, just out of sheer competence. But that, I agree with you that there needs to be so many pots on so many fires. We cannot, as much as electoral politics is very important to accomplishing our goals, it cannot be the only way in which we do so.
I think your assessment of Trump being the most incompetent guy, while I agree, it made me realize, or made me think about, essentially the goals of the two parties. Republicans don't give a shit about governing; they want control, right? Dems don't give a shit about governing; they want fundraising. That is pretty much their explicit purpose, is to sit around and make business deals and do the bare minimum to stay in power. Which is why we have, Republicans just want to implement a Christian nation. That's their ultimate goal, right? Like, very clearly, very obviously stated, that is their goal, is a white Christian nation. They're not going to stop. That's what they want to do. That is what they're doing, and that's what they've been working towards very successfully. And because Democrats don't have a goal, like, I cannot think of a policy goal of Democrats.
They don't have one right now. They really don't. They have. I could not tell you what, like, the most important thing other than beat Donald Trump.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is.
Like Kamala had legitimate policy. People just didn't care, right? Like, everybody who's like, oh, she had no policy, she was an idiot, everything she said was dumb, blah blah blah, completely misinformed. Like, she had meaningful policy and she was articulating it. Here's the problem: people don't care. No one cares. It's not about the policy that you're telling them. It's about if you can convince them that you feel like a good option. And she didn't do that. And despite having meaningful policy that probably would have been good for a lot of the people who turned around and voted for Trump, she didn't explain it well. Trump went on stage and said they're eating the dogs, right? She went on stage and said, well, if you are a first-time homeowner and you want to apply for a specific particular loan, you will be able to have this tax break that you'll be able to collect after this specific. That's not eating the dogs. They're eating the dogs. That became the discourse of the entire world the next day, regardless of it being absurd and terrible. It didn't matter to his base. He won by way of controlling the narrative and being the thing that people remembered from that. No one could actually listen to Kamala's policy and make sense of it because people aren't politicians, and she was trying to pitch them like they were politicians.
It's very. I mean, we've known this for decades in American politics. What you're saying matters far less than how you're saying it. We knew it since what was it? JFK, Nixon. I'm not a history buff, but the first televised presidential debate, and everyone who listened to it on the radio thought Nixon won, and everyone who, again, I could be getting the people wrong.
I
there.
know what you're talking about,
but yeah. Again, I wish I knew my history a little bit better. But yeah, like everyone who listened on the radio was like, oh yeah, this guy won. Everyone who watched on TV was like, clearly this guy won, and it was just the presentation. And we've known that it matters so much more. And it's very funny when I hear, tapped in political journalists and pundits be like, oh, policy is the problem. Like, no one fucking knows what the policy is. That doesn't matter. We've always known this. You just think that because you pay attention to it. I do too. I understand. I love talking about policy. It just matters diddly shit when it comes to electoral politics because the average American doesn't, first of all, doesn't care, and second of all, doesn't understand what the fucking words mean. So all that matters is how you say them. And can you convince me that you're someone I should believe in? That's really all that matters.
I think there's been a lot. I don't want to dwell on
we've
this
definitely overextended. We're well past Zohran at this point. This is one of the times I'm like, how am I even going to clip this? I don't fucking know. But it's a good conversation.
The last thing I want to say about all of that, I guess, about all the electoral stuff is I generally hesitate to identify as a particular label with regards to my political alignment because it's not that simple, I think. If someone presses me, I tend to say anarchist, largely because I'm more critical and think more in terms of systems than I do in terms of like parties and the system, the government that we have. I'm more interested in analyzing structures, hierarchies, how they're impacting people, and how they can be manipulated, basically, especially in from the ground up. I know that there are a lot of people, especially in the space of anarchism, especially in the space of like communists, and even like socialists, who really, really, really are against electoral politics and like really just don't want to tell people not to vote. Don't want to say like it doesn't matter. Both parties are the same. It's all rigged. I just don't subscribe to that ideology, and I think you can be a very forward-thinking person anywhere left of center, basically, and electoral politics are just kind of one part of a much larger whole, which is why I've been saying things along the lines of like, I think that like coalitions will be more impactful than election cycles. Like, they matter. They obviously matter. If they didn't matter, we wouldn't be having a conversation about it. The notion that people shouldn't get involved in voting if you are like a progressive, because that's like giving up your progressive card or whatever. I hate that. I just wanted to make that point very clear. Like, please look up who is running in every level of election that's around you. It's really, you can just like search who's on the ballot in my area and like just like look at their policies. School board, right? Like school board, city council, all the way up to executive positions, to judges, to governor, and then up to president. Like, it's not just vote for the president. You don't even have to vote for the president, right? Like, you didn't have to vote for Kamala or Trump in the 2024 election. You could have just left it blank. That's fine. But like, participate, because not participating is how we end up where you've got like analytic agencies that are trying to erase entire political outlooks because they don't have any data about them giving a shit to participate. So that's my little rant.
No, you are preaching to the choir here. It's, if you are a one of the leftists who wouldn't vote for Kamala because of Gaza, I always say, I think you're strategically inaccurate. I understand the moral reasoning that you're using. Totally. Here. I just think you're strategically incorrect. I'm not gonna hold that against you, but I also think there's a high chance that you're a fucking bot. Like, I don't think that portion of our base like actually really exists in large numbers. I think most actual human beings that I talk to, like yourself, the other guests that come on the show, without even asking. Like I haven't talked to you about this before. I have not seen you post about this before, but you said the same exact thing that we always talk about in the show. Like, yeah, it's the strategically correct option, especially on a local level. You better get your ass out and vote, because that's where you actually have a real democratic impact on what happens in people's lives. And so, yeah, fucking do that.
The reason that I say it so clearly is because I think that there are a lot of people. I think a lot of the people who fall into the category of those who say that are like 18, and I don't mean that to be like, oh, my lights just turned off. I don't say that to be like, oh, well, they're dumb. It's not about that. It's about being duped by bad actors during election cycles and having experience with what that looks like. And what that looks like is people telling you don't vote because it's useless, or people saying vote for fucking Jill Stein, who is a well understood grifter by anyone who has voted in an election before. And I think it's really scary when I see people who want to form a sense of political identity get it from a single TikToker who says, like, I'm not going to vote because it's bad, because voting is morally agreeing with the system. Like, that's not what voting is. And the number of people who, whether or not they're bots, I think that there's a non-zero number of young, impressionable people who hear someone that they like tell them it's okay to just give up and not vote. And then they hold on to that for a long time.
Now, I so want to move on to the next topic, but again,
we can move on. Let's move on.
No, I have to address what you just said, because what you just said, again, guys, I have to let this be clear. Me and Dev chatted probably 20 messages back and forth. That is the extent of our conversation before he came on this show. A refrain that I often repeat is that one of the biggest problems with the left is that people often get introduced to the left in college. That is where, again, not everyone, but a hell of a lot of us got introduced to these concepts and these ideologies. And in college, you are surrounded by people who have no actual power or currency. The power dynamics and currency of college is social power. And so there is this incentive to have the most morally correct position as possible, because there is no practical application of what you're doing. All that matters is you seem like the most right person. And in order to gain more social capital, that often comes at the expense of taking it from others and attacking those who are, you can paint as inferior. And, that doesn't just exist on the left. That exists in every fucking social dynamic, particularly in college, particularly in high school. But I love that you said that it's mostly 18-year-olds. These young people who are first introduced to these concepts and go all the way to the left because they're like, oh, shit, everything I've ever been told is a lie. This must be the entire complete truth, and I'm going to believe it with my whole heart and fuck everyone else. And once you actually enter the workforce and experience the real world and have real life problems come at you, you understand the importance of pragmatism at points. And I feel like that's one of the problems, is that a lot of times when we're arguing with these people, we don't understand that we're arguing with an 18 to 20-year-old who doesn't really, again, I'm not disparaging 18 to 20-year-olds. No, I just know when I was that age, I also didn't really know fuck about how shit actually worked.
It is, and I still
don't, by the way, as a 28-year-old.
Yeah, it's because you I think that the problem at 18 is if you are an 18-year-old and you think that you know everything, that's the danger. And you haven't had enough life experience to realize otherwise. And it's not a matter, again, it's not a matter of intelligence or ability. It's just a matter of experience. And like you said, a lot of it comes down to having just experienced what life is like and understanding what meaningful action looks like. I also think that travel is important, seeing travel, or even just learning more about other ways of life. That you don't really have an opportunity to do that. Most people don't have an opportunity to do that until really ever, but definitely not before.
Yeah, I was going to say, when does that happen, Dev? I haven't experienced
I went on my first overseas trip ever this year at age however fucking old I am. And it was great. I don't know how many more times I'll be able to do that in my entire life. You know,
it's wild. It's wild. So I was hoping that this wouldn't happen. But we just got a comment from Colby, who's a longtime listener of this show. I know we're on a live stream, but the Wall Street Journal just dropped a great Trump Epstein piece. Had you heard about the Wall Street Journal piece that was coming down the pipeline?
I had not.
So yeah, I had heard about 2 hours before coming on this show that it was in the works, and I was like, "Fuck, it's going to drop on the live stream." So Colby, we won't discuss that because I don't like just reading brand new while live. But we will be talking about that. Actually, not on Tuesday, because that's when we're doing our maybe we'll touch on it on Tuesday before we do the Superman review. But we'll definitely talk about it next Thursday and just ongoing. But that's a good segue into the entire Epstein conversation. Dev, it looks like you have pulled up the Wall
I pulled
Street
it up.
Journal.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's and while each of us are talking, maybe we'll also read that on the side. But yeah, so that Wall Street Journal piece, again, this just dropped. Anyone who's watching this right now, it has dropped while we are live streaming currently, so we haven't read it. I don't know if there's any bombshells in there, but I do know that Donald Trump personally called the editor of the Wall Street Journal to fight against it being released, and B, that the fact that it was released means that Rupert Murdoch is pulling support from the Trump administration some way, shape, or form, which is massive, has massive political implications. And C, Jesus Christ, man, there's been so many scandals where we're like, this is what's going to get him. This is what when he said, I grabbed him by the pussy, we're like, oh, it's over. Hillary's going to win. And like, there have been so many times where you're like, shit, there's no way Trump's going to wiggle his way out of this one. And then he wiggles his way out of this one. I don't know. Again, I don't want to be Charlie Brown kicking the football here, but like, this feels different. This feels like something that he's not going to be able to wiggle his way out of. I don't know what the end result of that is. We are in completely uncharted territory here. But do you agree with me that this scandal, it's different than the other ones?
Yes. I agree that it's different. I think that that's undeniable. I think that the reaction already is undeniably different. I think the fact that Elon Musk broke up with him, not exactly related to the Epstein thing, but then turned around and was like, he's in the Epstein files. I think the most notable thing about all of this, and real quick, just like my quick skim of that article, I didn't see anything that was like, here's the smoking gun, but it's basically just like a big detailed thing about like their relationship. I think it's meaningful that if he had to call them to tell them not to post it and they posted it anyway, that's meaningful. The reason this is different is Pizzagate. This is all still Pizzagate. I was literally just talking about this earlier on my stream, actually.
Pizzagate all the way down.
It's literally all still Pizzagate. It's the same thing. So the entirety of like the core of MAGA has been about a giant sprawling conspiracy that culminates with a day in which Trump outs a shadowy cabal of pedophiles that literally, this is not an exaggeration, this is the literal thing they believe, a shadow cabal of pedophilic Democrats who feed on babies to get superpowers. And I know the words I just said sound absurd, but that is genuinely what the core of that base believes. And so the Epstein files are the most tangible thing that they've had in this conspiracy theory towards that payoff that they've been waiting for. Reminder, this has been a 10-year journey for these people, right? They've been behind Trump doing all this shit with the Pizzagate stuff, and then with like backing him during January 6th and saying, like, trying to play that down. They have been shrugging off so many massive red flags because they've been laser focused on him delivering the thing that they've been waiting for. So everything else that he's wiggled out of has been because it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't that important to them. They did not care. prices not going down, they never cared about that, right? They're going after people who are not the worst criminals. They never cared about that. And we know that. There might be a few people, but the MAGA base did not care. And I want to be really, really clear. Them turning on Trump does not mean that they are turning on their political ways, right? The right turning on Trump does not mean that the right is getting less right. It means that Trump is no longer serving the role that they wanted him to serve, which is essentially God King, right? Essentially Messiah. The messiahship of Trump was to be solidified with the reveal of the Epstein documents. He didn't make that clear. He didn't say that was going to be the case, but that is what was put onto him and what he benefited from. He was directly benefiting from the belief of the MAGA base that he was going to enact the storm, which was the clearing out of the shadowy cabal of pedophiles from the government, draining the swamp, right? All of it goes back to that. That's what Drain the Swamp is. That's what Pizzagate was all about. And that's what the Epstein Files are all about. It's all the same through line. So he's been promising in one way or another, or benefiting from the implicit promise that he was going to deliver on this thing. And he has then turned around and said, you're dumb for believing that. Or like, this isn't a big deal. And he can tell them prices aren't a big deal. He can tell them who we're deporting is not a big deal because we're deporting people. He cannot tell them the centerpiece of the entirety of your belief system around your participation in this cult doesn't matter. Because that's the functional equivalent of a liberal walking up to a Trump supporter and being like, but he said grab him by the pussy. And they're like, I don't care. Right? But he comes up to them and says, Epstein documents don't matter. And they're like, yes, they do. It's the same energy, that is why I think it's different. Is he going to be able to wiggle out of it? I don't think it matters. The man's president, and also as of today, it came out that he's been diagnosed with whatever condition. All those things, those pictures that have been going around of like his hand being caked in makeup to probably cover up bruises that are probably from an IV. That's all been confirmed by the White House today. He's been diagnosed with some vein thing.
Vein thing, yeah. That's
vein. It's got vein in the name somewhere.
Intravenous something or other, yeah.
Essentially, the man.
We're not doctors.
No blood.
People.
He doesn't have a blood, and because when you don't have a blood, you die. So the man's dying, and is president. I don't know how much more he has to wiggle out of. Like wiggle out of it into what? He loses his support from his base. That doesn't change the mechanisms in play. It's not going to change the Supreme Court's decisions. It's not going to change what the Republicans in Congress are doing. Half of them are freaking saying, well, I'll quit then. Like if you're gonna make this too difficult for me, I'll just not seek re-election and go get a book deal. So I just don't know what at this point, I don't know what it matters if he can't wiggle out of it, if he loses his base, because he's gotten everything he can get from it already. So he wanted to not go to jail, and now he's just going to die in office, you know?
There's a couple of levels to this, and I think they're all worth talking about. One, something you said there of I'll start with this. First, I completely agree. The reason that this one is different is because his base truly believes this. It's, and again, I don't want to paint everyone in the MAGA base with the Pizzagate brush. There's many factions involved here in this coalition, and not all of them believe that, say, specifically there is a giant mass conspiracy of Democrats trying to eat children's blood, right? But they all believe the Epstein shit. Like every single MAGA voter believes that Epstein was killed by the deep state, someone, what have you, in order to prevent him from testifying against powers that be. And honestly, I agree with them. I of all of the conspiracy theories in the world, we talk about this on the show all the time. Like the easiest way to say, hey, does this conspiracy theory hold water? Because again, some of them do. Conspiracy theories have been proven true in the past.
Yeah.
And the way that I usually look at it is just Occam's razor. is the ostensive explanation for what's happening more likely than the conspiracy theory? And in most cases, it is. There's usually a reasonable explanation that addresses all of the conspiracy questions.
It's the boring explanation.
A boring one, for sure. In this case, there is not. Like, in this case, the official stance of the U.S. government is, yeah, Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and was flying people out to his island, where there are many documented cases, thousands of videos of people having sex with children. This is all the case, but also we don't have any evidence of who any of those people are that are in these videos. And also, he happened to kill himself during the 3 minutes in which the cameras at his prison happen to every night be not recording. Like, it's just the idea that all of that is true is far less likely.
Yeah, that's why it's insulting.
It's insulting. It's insulting. Yeah. And that's why, like, even I love this. I don't know if you saw this, but Matt Walsh is one of my favorite right-wing pundits because for a couple reasons. A, he's good at what he does. He's better at rage bait than basically anyone in the world. Like, he has like Stephen A. Smith levels of rage bait fucking instinct. And B, he's genuinely evil. He's not pretending. He's genuinely a fucking Christo-fascist evil person. And so, like, at least I always say those people are at least honest. Like they at least I can understand them most of the time. And even he is like, and I'm pulling this up here. This is what he tweeted. 2 tweets here I thought were just excellent. A, that this administration invited influencers to the White House, handed them binders that said Epstein Files Phase 1, end stage photo ops outside with the binders. Now Trump calls the whole thing a dumb hoax. There's just no way for an honest person to look at this set of facts. And then he said, and believe it's true. But like, that's very funny because Matt Walsh is an expert in making the most ridiculous argument for the most indefensible things. And even he's like, bro, I got nothing. I can't defend this. No reasonable person can believe this. And then also he tweets, so this issue is dumb and boring and doesn't matter, but also we need a special prosecutor to look into it. The messaging on this issue has just been god-awful, totally schizophrenic and incoherent, which I just find very funny because that's Trump's entire thing and they're just now noticing. But like, that's kind of where we're at here. Like, it's just, this has been so obviously a scam. They all believe it because it probably is true. I agree with them. I don't know who's on the list. I don't know who's involved. Before all of this, I wasn't even sure Donald Trump was on the list. Like, I was like, I'm pretty sure he was protecting people and his buddies and stuff, but I don't know if Donald Trump personally is implicated in this evidence. Now I'm more confident in that than ever after the events of the past 2 weeks. Donald Trump has been playing this about as poorly as he possibly can because he only knows one strategy. Yep. Never play defense, always play offense. It's just that the people coming from him for the first time are his base. And he's confused as to why they're not just following in line like they always have. And it's because what he's telling them, he used it to use them, to get them on board. And now he's pulling the rug out from under them in a way that is just unforgivable. And he cannot provide even a shred of an explanation for. And that's why this, I think, is different. In terms of what will actually happen, I don't know. I don't know what will happen, but I disagree that it will just go back to normal.
It's not going to go. Oh no, it's not going to go back to normal for sure.
So okay, let's say let's put forward 2 sequences of events here. One, he loses the support of his base, essentially making him a lame duck president. Because, or I guess I should get your agreement on this first. This is something me and TJ talk about on the show a lot. Donald Trump's claim to power is not mass popularity in the United States of America. It's extreme loyalty from a large enough faction of the Republican voter base that he can threaten to primary any sitting Republican and win. Mm-hmm. That is where his power is derived from. It's his control over the Republican Party. And if this causes MAGA to revolt on him, he will lose that power. And suddenly there will be a power vacuum in the Republican Party. Whether or not he dies because of his vain shit or whatever, in any way, shape, or form where he loses that power, this entire Republican stranglehold we have right now is kaput. Would you agree with that?
No, I don't think. I when you say Republican stranglehold, like you're saying that if Trump died and there was a power vacuum, that would be the functional end of the iron grip that Republicans have had on like everything.
So everything, no. I mean, obviously, if Trump dies tomorrow, Republicans still hold a trifecta. They're still in power.
Yeah,
right?
but immediately
they still have the far superior messaging apparatus, the way better propaganda. They still have all of that, right? But it becomes fractured and it becomes dysfunctional in a way that means all of the crazy shit that's been getting pushed through is going to come to a screeching halt. We are going to see level of things happening at the federal government similar to a closely split fucking House and Senate, and we're just nothing is really happening. That's what will kind of happen. Things will come screeching to a halt, and then we'll hit 2026 and see what happens. Or depending when this shit goes down, we'll hit 2028 and see what happens. But like that's what I'm saying is like the current power structure that is allowing them to accomplish the big beautiful bill, the deportations, the everything is going to come crashing down. Will they be able to recover it faster than Democrats can? Maybe. I don't fucking know. But the current status quo of power of MAGA Republicans is going to disappear, whether Trump is eliminated by Epstein or Mother Nature.
I understand the argument. I'm skeptical that Trump plays that big of a role. I don't think
interesting.
I don't think he matters. Like Trump is a mascot, right? He's not like he will tweet something and then tweet the exact opposite 3 days later and then tweet the original thing again 3 days after that. Like he is not the one setting policy. Everyone that is around him is setting policy. The mass deportations, that's not Trump. He doesn't care. He doesn't want to deport people that he can otherwise underpay to work his hospitality industry. Like he doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about trans stuff. He doesn't care about any of that. He's on the record saying he doesn't care about that in the past. He just wants to be the center of attention of all things and say whatever and never be challenged on it. Stephen Miller is the one that's pushing the deportation efforts. And like the guy who's whatever, the Tom Homan or whatever, the guy who's the border czar, like he is directly involved in all of that. I don't think that Trump is micromanaging really anything. I think he's just in places and saying things, and the party is just sort of dealing with that while they do the things that they are going to do anyway. Like, it's not like Trump is the one who's the mastermind behind Project 2025. And it's not like he's the one. It's not like he has a single policy brain cell in his head. He can't formulate
concepts
policy.
of a policy brain
cell.
Yeah,
quite literally. The man is like, I don't like Obamacare because of the word Obama.
Yep.
I don't have a plan to replace it. I have been saying I would do
I want a Nobel Peace Prize because Obama
terms.
got one.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't like, he is not a functional president. So his death, I truly believe, would, if anything, just make life easier in the White House. And like, it's not a hot take to say like, oh, like a Trump death means we get advanced presidency, which means that like he'll be more effective at quietly doing the things that they wanted to do anyway. But also, yeah, like I just like Trump being alive solely just pushes out the debate over who's the new leader. And I truly don't know who that's going to be because nobody in the Republican Party has charisma outside of Trump. So like, I don't know where they're going to land with who's their new guy. But as far as setting the tempo and policy and direction, it's not Trump. He's just the one that's keeping people interested. Like they don't want the policies the Republicans are doing. That's why the big beautiful bill is like so widely disliked. It's why we've got people who are like, oh, I voted for Trump, but now I'm going to die because I don't have my medical insurance. They don't want that. They want the guy who makes them feel good about the things that they've been told are the things that are causing them pain. And he literally, the man got up on stage during his presidential campaign and said the words verbatim, "I am your retribution." That's not policy. That is just riling people up. I'm gonna get back at the people who make you mad. It is the lowest common denominator rhetoric possible, but that's not policy. So like, I just don't know what his death is going to like truly do in terms of stopping the current agenda. Because like, as long as the Supreme Court is stacked how it is, there's just not a functional political body interested in stopping what the Republicans are doing currently, with or without Trump.
So I agree with you 100% on Trump isn't the one actually setting policy. That is beyond clear. You said that you can actually tell at this point which policies are coming from who. Like, you can tell when, oh, this is a Stephen Miller thing. This is a Russell Vought thing. Tom Homan, I feel like, is more of just a foot soldier who genuinely wants to hurt people.
Real quick on that. What the fuck? Like, imagine being in 2025 a guy who stakes his entire life's memory. This man stepped out in front of an entire country and said, I want to be in charge of what is obviously a Nazi concentration camp style effort to abuse and disenfranchise and harm people in this country based on skin color. And he's like, that's going to be me. I want that job. The guy who ran and said that he wanted generals like Hitler, I want to be that general. Like, I get it. The guy's a Nazi and doesn't care. Like, he doesn't care that he's a Nazi and people know that. It still is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
That somebody would be like, I'm going to just loudly be a Nazi. Like, I'm going to make this my thing. It's not
even just loudly I'm going to be a Nazi. Clearly we've seen fairly influential, famous people be okay with that.
The man went out and did it.
The thing that Tom Homan particularly that like just gets me, just every fiber of his being is evil. It is clear. He walks, talks, and looks like a comic book villain. He looks like someone that Batman or Spider-Man go out in the streets and beat up. Like that is what he seems like, just in his essence. In the same way that Stephen Miller is just very oddly reminiscent of Joseph Goebbels. Like it's just like, it's very just icky. Tom Homan is just, he looks like he's like the fucking Penguin. He's just a mean bully. He is the guy for people who watch A Few Good Men and they're like, yo, that Jack Nicholson guy, he's the hero of this story. Like that, and it's just shocking to me that other people don't see that. I'm just like,
it's extremely lucky for him that he has such a small penis, because when he's constantly walking around in all these ICE raids and he's just full on hard at the sight of these brown people being harmed, he doesn't have to worry about embarrassing pictures from the media. And that's just, you gotta thank the little things. You gotta look out for what's good in life.
Oh God. Anyway, back to the point that I was making before I went on the top, which, by the way, we don't talk enough about. Tom Homan does not get talked about enough for how much, like, we should do a ranking one of
just
these days.
Abject evil.
We'll bring you back on, because we do like a lot of like rankings. It's something that we introduced in the show, and like what I want to do is just a ranking of the Trump cabinet menagerie of just how much I want to beat the shit out of them, because they vary. They vary. And to me, like, Trump is actually at the bottom of the list in terms of the ones I want to personally beat the shit out of, because as you said, most, like, he is just a self-serving, like, psychopath. Like
he's predictable.
He's predictable. I actually, like, besides being self-serving, I don't think he's that bad of a human being. Like, I don't think he gets off on other people's pain. He just only cares about himself. And honestly, those kinds of people, they're predictable in a way that, like, is less evil than some other people. Whereas, like, Tom Homan, Stephen Miller, like, I just see them and there's just a reaction.
I would love to see the last bubble pop from Stephen Miller. That's all I'm gonna say. That's about as far as I'll go.
Did you see the clip that came out today from him on the bus in like 2003?
No, did he get stabbed? That would be nice.
Oh, that would be nice. I'll see if I can find this the next time you're talking. But he basically endorses torture.
That makes sense.
But yeah. So anyway, the point I was making with all of this is that the people around Trump are the ones setting these policies. I agree with that, but I don't think that they would be able to without Trump. I think that once you lose Trump, once you lose the personality behind the cult of personality, you lose all of the power that comes with it. And my reasoning for this, my evidence for this argument is that if I think we both agree Russell Vought is kind of the mastermind here. Like, as much as like Tom Homan and Stephen Miller are particular kinds of evil, I don't think either of them are particularly like smart. Or like clever puppeteers behind the scenes. Yeah. They are much more just mouthpieces for evil. Whereas Russell Vought was clearly behind. He's been in that same position in the Trump administration, quietly in the background. He doesn't get in front of the cameras. He doesn't talk. He just quietly accomplishes his goals and does it pretty darn well while managing this fucking circus around him. And he has never made a move against Trump. He's never tried to attach himself to anyone else. If he was capable of accomplishing shit without the circus, he would have done that. He is very intelligent. He's very smart. He knows how to get shit done. And if he could have done it without these idiots around him, he would have. In fact, I think he tried and Trump won. And surrounding with competent, generally aligned people didn't fucking work. He realized he needed complete loyalty to the cult of personality in order to get these large-scale sweeping changes done. And that's what we're seeing right now. So I would argue that without Trump, again, a power vacuum could be filled by something worse. So that's a possibility. But I think that in terms of, hey, how do we stop this shit from happening? Cooing Trump in one way, shape, or form, and preferentially doing it by also exposing the Epstein cabal would be crazy. And here's the other thing. If like it all comes out, if we get like a deep throat level, they got the fucking files and it goes all public, a lot of heads are going to be rolling. That's the huge thing where it's like, shit, we're not talking about a power vacuum on the Republicans. We're talking about the largest global power vacuum that's ever existed, because it's not even just America. Like, that's going to be massive. Like, I can't even tell you what happens there, but at that point, the entire world changes overnight.
Yeah. We just saw that with Diddy and them like doing everything they could to limit the fallout of other names. If there was a full-on leak of the entire thing and it was like somehow verifiable, we're not talking about like Trump being on the list, blah, blah, blah. Like I've always thought that he was on the list. Like, I don't see why he wouldn't be. The dude's been a creep his entire life. But it's not even just that. And it's not even just the Trump admin. And it's not even just Republicans. It's definitely Democrats. It's absolutely a lot of your favorites, you being general. Stephen Hawking is pictured in the Epstein Island. Like, it's
really, I didn't actually know that one.
Yeah. It's everyone.
I didn't know Epstein Island was ADA acceptable.
Wildly wide reaching. And so it's like, it's going to be, you've got princes from the UK, you've got politicians from everywhere. It's going to be, you've got businessmen from all sorts of sectors. The argument, like the conspiracy that Epstein was an Israeli agent, like an Israeli asset to get dirt on all these people. Like, I'm not going to say whether or not that's accurate because I don't really have any evidence one way or another, but it makes sense at that scale. Like, it might not be Israel, it could be anyone, but like, if you wanted to have like dirt on everyone in the world, you would find a guy who can just generate that dirt for all of them. And that's exactly what happened. Then when he wasn't useful, he was gone. Right. So I can't imagine everyone that's on that list, we would see like Hollywood would crumble. We would see like the political, assuming that action was taken. First of all, it could very well be that this releases and no one does anything. Absolutely.
I don't. Well, okay. By no one does anything. I could maybe agree. Like, there's no prosecution or whatever.
Yes,
because there's not enough evidence. But like, socially speaking,
yes,
everyone on that list is persona non grata. Like, it would be. I don't think
it honestly could be so overwhelming that people just can't handle it. Like, I'm not trying to be. I know I've been like doing a lot of tempering here, but I can honestly see a reality where it is such an overwhelmingly large number of people that it's like there's just no way to comprehend this. Like
yeah.
It genuinely could upturn the entirety of human civilization as we know it if we actually took action against everybody that was on the list. And that level of change is very unpredictable.
The more, and that's one of the reasons why like Trump is taking the wrong turn here strategically, is like the more he wriggles against it, the more our imaginations are just set aflame.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't know what evidence there is that he could be telling the truth. That's maybe the most wild thing of all, is that I believe that it's very possible that there is not much actual evidence. I wouldn't believe that like Epstein actually killed himself during those three. Like, again, I do think there was foul play involved there. Like, deep down, I'm not going to stop believing that until proven otherwise. But I could believe that the government doesn't actually have all that much data or evidence against him. That would, do what you're saying, upend the global order. Like, maybe it's just a couple names that are like, severely implicated in these and the rest doesn't. And Donald Trump is telling the truth of like, hey, there's really not much here, guys. But like, damn, it's past the point at this point where that would even be believed anymore. Like even if it was all released, a large majority of people would still be like, I don't believe it. There's more there.
No,
because of just how much they have fought against this.
If it was not a big deal and they released it, then that would have been the end of it.
And
they would have been like, you know what? All right, maybe there's something else. They would have found a new thing to glob onto.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the thing where it's like the Biden angle of this is actually one of the more fascinating parts, because he's making this dumb argument of like, oh, the Biden put all of this bullshit in there. And it's like, well, if Biden put bullshit in there to incriminate you, why didn't he use it before you won the presidency? But the flip side of that is, well, if there is damning information in there, why didn't Biden use it before Trump won the presidency? And that is maybe what like lights my imagination aflame more than anything else.
I mean, Bill Clinton is a big one.
But like, even how much power does Bill Clinton actually
I say possess? Bill Clinton. Really, I think there's a lot of Democrats.
Exactly.
Probably
a lot. It has to be huge. It has to be so big that Joe Biden was sitting there. And by Joe Biden, I obviously mean Joe Biden's team of handlers was sitting there and they're like, hey guys, we can have 100% certainty of Donald Trump not winning this next election. And they looked at the other side of that coin and went, we prefer Donald Trump as president.
Yeah.
And that's wild.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's just quite literally all of them, like just both sides. But I also think that there's I think the most likely explanation for their constantly changing story is they did have it. They did intend to release something. And then if he was an asset and a foreign entity got involved and was like, in part of releasing this, you are going to uncover other foreign assets or other persons of interest that we have stationed in places. And we're not in the habit of outing. Well, Trump is, but generally the U.S. is not in the habit of outing our allies' spy networks. So like, it very well could have been that they fully intended to do it, and then they got an email one day. They got a little Facebook message, and they were like, it was it said from your boy Netty Boy 123 said, "Hey, please don't do that." And they were like, "Oh damn, I guess we can't do that."
You do have to wonder who scared it. So that seems like a very likely explanation. Don't get me wrong. The explanation that I want to believe in my heart is that Donald Trump has always been very heavily implicated in the files, but during term 1, he just didn't give a flying fuck to even look at them, and then or just forgot because he has dementia.
Yeah.
And then he was like, "Oh, my base seems to care about this. It seems to light them up. I'm going to tell them all that I'm going to do this and unleash the files." And then he was like, Levitt, go and release the files. Pambandi, release files. Do this whole thing. And they're like, "Okay, but obviously we can't release this stuff, so we're going to make this show of it just to appease him." Then he forgot about it. And then this is the thing I still don't know. I still don't know why he even released the memo saying there was no files. It was that's how this all started. That's how this entire news cycle started. He's dumb. Yeah. But it's like, it was that's the biggest conspiracy thing in my mind of like, okay, what made him do that? And maybe it's just because he's dumb, but it's like, that's an unforced error. And it was done in a professional manner. That's why it's like, it's not just like an off the cuff Trump Truth Social post. It's like, that was done in a very professional manner that like, why was it released? I don't fucking know, but it was. And so she's like, I think that maybe Donald Trump just forgot he was in the files. And then like, he looked at the files and was like, "Oh fuck, we can't release this now." That's how that happens.
I think he genuinely, and maybe it's dementia, maybe it's something else. I think that the man has spent so much time steeping himself in his own set of lies that he genuinely doesn't remember things like if he's in the files or what the files even are at that moment, with that matter. But I think that he's just so used to lying his way out of everything and doesn't think about the downstream effects of the lies, because almost every single time he says a blatant, obvious, easily disprovable lie and 0 people challenge him on it. And then everyone who has half a brain is like, why isn't anyone challenging him on it? And then we move on. And he just has, I cannot think of a single time that he was pressed on something. Even when he was pressed on the healthcare thing, and he said, "I have concepts of a plan." And that was it.
It worked. But that's the thing. His base doesn't care about healthcare, man. They care about this shit. And that's why it's not going away. Yeah. Just wanted to point out a couple comments here before we move on to our next topic. Or Monic, did someone else force the error? And by the way, thank you very much for the super sticker donation. That to me, like, if I were to say, did someone else force it? I feel like Elon could be part of that. Like, Elon taking that tweet and saying, "By the way, Trump is in the Epstein Files," you could argue that it started there.
Sparked all of it.
It sparked all, because that falling out when it happened, and we said this, like, when Elon first entangled himself with Trump, this only ends badly. Like, those two egos cannot coexist in a symbiotic relationship. They will destroy each other. And that was, we said it when Donald Trump was elected, our greatest chance of success is the kaijus fighting. Trump and various billionaires eating each other alive. And that is what I think is probably the most likely explanation, is that Elon was threatening something. There was some sort of fight going on, and Elon was threatening something, and Trump was like, "We're just going to release that there is no files." And he thought that, yeah, they'll just all go along with this like they always do. And he miscalculated on that in the largest possible way. Again, this is speculation. There's no evidence here, but it seems to me to be the most likely explanation for something that is otherwise unexplainable.
I very much agree with the commenter that it very well could have been somebody else that forced the error. But I still think it was a misstep. I don't think it was an intentional move. I'm not sure if that was the implication or not. I still think it was a misstep. But Musk has a history of going off the rails and then being checked by another billionaire.
Yeah.
There was that time where he was going off the rails against Apple, and like Tim Cook was like, I gotta sit the kid down and spank him. And that's precisely what happened. Like, he was bitching and moaning about Apple, and then he met with Tim Cook, and then the next day he was like, everything's fine. with Apple. Apple's fine. And it's like, what the hell did Tim Cook? Tim Cook just sat him down and smacked him. Just like, whoa. So yeah, like Musk is impulsive and he is a big risk to the order that the billionaires have established, to their reputation, to everything. And so when he came out and was like, Trump's in the Epstein Files, because he was big mad at that time, I don't think he was lying. I think that that was like one of the few times that Musk was telling the truth, because he was mad and because he can't control himself and his emotions. So I think what probably happened was someone in the chain, be it someone who wanted to try to like just put all of it to rest from the DOJ, or maybe Trump was really adamant, because in the past he has been like, if he gets hyper fixated on something, he can still make that happen, even though he's largely impotent. It very well could have just been we are now on the back foot. We have to put something out, and we can't put out the files.
Yeah.
So we're just going to say there aren't files. And I genuinely think, again, I think he's just so used to lying. I think the entire administration is so used to not being challenged on the lies that they just did fuck up that calculation. I think it's as simple as that.
I think that's the most likely explanation. I think, again, I'm excited to see how this plays out, Dev. Like, I cannot wait. This has brought me joy in times of distress, just watching this happen, because it's the first time I think we're actually seeing Trump really fucking sweat, and it's wonderful to watch. But let's move on to our. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say he's sweating. I don't know that this is the end for him. I think he's sweating. I think his base is pissed. I think as long as he can find something else to give them, like, I'm curious to see in like 3 weeks, you know, the like when we're past the 2-week cycle that he likes to operate on, we're still in that cycle. Once we get past that, I think we'll have more clarity about how the actual situation plays out.
Agreed. So moving on to our last topic today, Dev. So earlier you mentioned something, and I was like, oh shit, that's going to be a great segue. And then we talked for another fucking 20 minutes. But you brought up bombing brown people, which brings us to our next topic, Israel. I don't know, maybe I felt this way a couple times before. So again, maybe I'm always the optimistic one. I'm always the one looking at the silver linings. But it feels to me like currently there's a small but significant shift in the way the powers that be are talking about Israel. And a couple examples of that would be, did you happen to read the New York Times op-ed that was released? I,
on principle, tend to not read New York Times op-eds.
That's totally totally reasonable. So we'll go through that. But I also want to bring up, because it's not just the New York Times op-ed, it's Alyssa Slotkin, who, for people who are unfamiliar with Alyssa Slotkin, seems to be like the young person establishment moderates are trying to shove down our throat. That just hasn't been working so far, but she's clearly the chosen one from that
charisma.
Negative. She's fucking awful. I really despise her. But even her, like, again, she is a poster boy for moderate Democrats, and she's posting another violent week in the Middle East. In Gaza this weekend brought the death of another 60 Palestinians who were simply seeking food and water for their families. Israel has the responsibility to allow humanitarian aid in. Oh shit, I'm not sharing this right now. Hold on, I'm going to put this on the screen. This is what happens when TJ isn't here to put things on the screen for me. Anyway, Israel has the responsibility to allow humanitarian aid in, just as the U.S. had the responsibility to allow aid into places like Fallujah. And if President Trump's hand-picked aid organization can't get food and medicine to people in Gaza in a safe way, Israel has the responsibility to find one that can. In the West Bank, Israeli settlers beat a Palestinian American U.S. citizen to death. This totals 5 Americans killed in the West Bank since October 7, 2023, and more than a dozen Palestinians killed by lawless settler violence. It's hard to understand this lack of accountability by the Netanyahu government as anything other than tacit approval by the state, something that should be treated as abhorrent by all decent people. The violence has to end. As I saw from my own experience in places like Iraq, democratic governments have responsibilities even when under threat. If President Trump and his team truly want a lasting ceasefire, not to mention a Nobel Peace Prize, they need to extract basic humanitarian end law, she forgot aid, and order standards now. So we're going to go to New York Times. I'll say a couple clips from that later, but first I have this question to ask you. To me, seeing an establishment Democrat mention American citizens being killed in the West Bank by the IDF is a massive step forward.
It's sad.
It's sad, but
That's
like
absurd.
when Shireen Abu Akleh was killed, who was an American citizen, a journalist, she was sniped in the fucking head by the IDF, and then at her funeral, the IDF attacked the pallbearers who were carrying her fucking casket. No one said a fucking word. I don't think a single establishment Democrat even mentioned that happened, let alone criticized Israel for it. And here we have, again, the poster boy for this movement using some very strong language, specifically naming actions, saying Israel's in the wrong. That was unimaginable to me prior to October 7th. So the question for you is, do you agree with me that things are, I think things have been shifting in general, but like in the past couple of weeks, things are shifting a little bit more than they have, a little bit faster. Things are escalating. The temperature is increasing around Netanyahu.
Netanyahu has a lot of shit going on for himself right now. Like, he's actively on trial for corruption charges in Israel while he's carrying out all these strikes. And also now they're expanding strikes into Syria. Like, they first yesterday bombed a military facility in Syria, and then today just started bombing Damascus, just downtown, just random places.
Yep.
So he's been in and out of trouble for a long time. I don't know that Netanyahu is necessarily about to face the music. That's not what you said, though.
Yeah, I get it. We're still away from. I'm saying, like, is there a shift? Is there a tangible shift in momentum?
I think that the vibe shift is much more in the voter base than it is in the politicians, and I think we're starting to see a little bit, like you said, with Slotkin saying anything at all. I think they're starting to feel a little bit of pressure to at least look slightly neutral. Like, the position that she took was, hey, humanitarian aid shouldn't result in the death of the people who are supposed to be receiving the aid. That's not that hot of a take. So, like, I don't know. Like that is the very, very, very bare minimum to look more objective while not actually, like, truly condemning Israel. That implied some malfeasance, but there's not an innate sense of care about Israel among people younger than like Gen X. That's kind of the cutoff. Like, millennials sort of care a little bit, because I think we were more or less the last generation that, like, was really, really strongly targeted with birthright trips. For those who are not familiar, there is I believe it's a private organization that funds a thing that was, as someone who grew up in a Jewish extended family, I don't consider myself religious. My mother is Jewish, so on. There's sort of like a given. There's this concept of a birthright trip to Israel for all Jews, where, like, there is a organization that will pay for you to go visit Israel, and they bring you on a big propaganda tour and tell you about how you should join the IDF and how Israel's great and blah 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 blah. It's a propaganda machine, right? It's a come drink our Kool-Aid machine, and that's just like a thing that every young Jew in America was, like, aware of and offered. Like, hey, you want a free trip abroad where you're going to have, like, all expenses paid and get taken care of and everything? Cool. Yeah, I'm 18. I'll do that. That kind of stopped being so prevalent with us. And so, like, there's a few people that, like, our generation still has a decent mix of people who care about Israel and not. Gen Z doesn't give a fuck about Israel, and like the more people are not able to buy food, the less they're going to be like, yeah, well, you know, they have a right to defend themselves. Like, no, eventually they're gonna be like, I can't afford food. I'm too hungry to think about a country across the world. And I think that that's like where we are turning. I think that the politicians who have been getting away with doing this thing, supporting Israel for as long as we have, and it's not like the support that we've been giving to Israel is like new or even just recently spiking. We've been giving them this much money this whole time, but they've not, like, it's just not been publicized, and people have never really thought about it. They've just been told, oh, Israel, Jewish state, we got to be good about that because can't be mean to Jews, even though that's not what Israel is. Like, that's like equating Israel and Jews is awful. But now people are like, hey, things are getting really bad, and I keep hearing my elected officials talk about how great Israel is, and I don't understand that. I think it's a consequence of exactly what I was saying at the outset here, of like the past 10 years in politics has been insane, and people are paying way more attention to what politicians say, and people are confused at how much politicians talk about Israel and how prevalent this is when that's not our country. And so like that's probably driving it. At the same time, there is also that clip, and this is a Republican, mind you, but you know, Democrats also are very much pro-Israel. There's a clip of Susan Collins going around where somebody, like, she's getting into a car and somebody like accosts her with a camera and is like, what do you have to say about the American citizen who was beaten to death in Israel in the West Bank about this exact thing? And she gets flustered. And the only thing she says in response is, I support Israel. And then she closes the door to the car. And that's the end of the clip. So here is a sitting U.S. senator who is asked, what are your opinions on a American citizen being murdered by settlers in the West Bank? And her response was, I support Israel. So like, that's still the level of control that is held over our politicians right now for this fucking colony that we're trying to keep alive. And I think we'll see some mild criticism, and I think that's meaningful. I also think that I don't know what it would take for the US to stop trying to support Israel, like short of an actual coup. Right? Like, I don't understand what it would take, because like, it's our colony. That's it. Like, that's all it is. It's a colony in the Middle East that we fund with more money than they could ever put to use to just attack the people we don't want to have power in that region. We don't want to give up that asset. Like, that's all it comes down to. It's a geopolitical
I'm interested
asset.
in knowing, when did you get on the anti-Israel train? Like, are you someone like TJ will admit, like, he was not necessarily pro, but like just passively pro-Israel until after October 7th, when this became something that he was paying attention to, and he went, oh shit. I forget if he was specific after October 7th, but it wasn't something that he was really fully aware of until he started looking into it. For me, it's something that since high school, I looked into this shit, and I was like, wait a second, none of this makes any fucking sense. And the more I looked into it, it's like, oh my God. It's just like, the more you learn about this, the more obviously fucked up it is. And I am wondering, are you someone who's more of a post October 7th, as this became mainstream conflict, you learned about it and got on the right side of history? Or are you someone who's always been fighting this fight?
I wouldn't say I've always been fighting this fight, but I've never been like, I've been aware of the conflict for a long time. Obviously, the thing that turned me off of Israel is the thing that I mentioned before, where it's like the birthright trip stuff. Like, when that, I remember growing up believing that to just be an inherent thing about Judaism. I thought that like an inherent concept in being a Jew is at some point you go on a trip to Israel. And the beginning of my understanding of just how fucking weird all of this is was when I learned that was not the case. I don't remember the exact thing that sparked that. I think I was like talking to some other people, and I was like, yeah, like I never went on a birthright trip, and they're like, yeah, you shouldn't because blah. And I was like, oh, I think this was like late 2000s, early 2010s ish.
Mm-hmm.
And like from then I was like, oh, Israel fucking sucks. And then of course, like from there, once you start actually paying attention, you realize and see all the bad.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely before that wasn't like actively thinking about it ever. October 7th obviously changed a lot for the dynamism of that discussion in the US, and definitely for me, like I have been talking about it on my show very frequently, to the point of ruining my mental health for a while. And it's been hard, but I definitely feel stronger about it now. I've always felt like they deserve to be free, like Palestine should be free. I think as I have come into a position of very modest agency, I now feel more strongly that it's important to push back on it. And that's probably driven me to talk about it more.
Yeah, no, I always ask because I feel like there's a difference between people who knew about this before October 7th and just learned about it. Because to me, as someone who has been making content about this since before then and has felt this way since before I was making content, the rate of change that has happened in the past year and a half is something that is astounding. Because if you go back, there's an episode of Rick and Morty where is the Vindicators episode for anyone who has watched Rick and Morty before, and it's like Rick goes on a bender and then he's trying to like solve his riddles that he left for himself, and his riddle is like it's like, what is the most intense or whatever conflict in the universe? And Morty goes up and he's like, it's Israel. It's something he talks about when he gets drunk and blacks out. And Rick is like, I'm just saying there's certain things that are worth discussing about. So it's like, that was released in like 2017, 2018. Rick's character, for those who don't watch Rick and Morty, is supposed to be the total asshole who says what he feels is true, no matter how assholic it comes across as. And even he, in 2017, didn't want to touch Israel. And that, the fact that we now have a sitting congressman, a senior ranking sitting congressman criticizing Israel, to me is just, it's a breath of fresh air. It really fucking sucks that it's taken so many innocent people to die in order to make that happen. But like, I do think that it's important for us to recognize the progress that has been made if we ever want to resolve this conflict. And by resolve this conflict, I obviously mean in a way that is equitable for the Palestinians. But like, yeah, it is wild.
I want to specifically put a spotlight though on the public electorate sentiment. There's I know what you're saying is like, it's great that we're seeing any movement whatsoever. Like, you are 100% correct that you would not catch a sitting U.S. politician criticizing Israel in any capacity whatsoever just a few years back. The intense sudden realization of so many people who are otherwise not politically active about the situation with Israel, just how complicit we are, just how much of our taxpayer dollars are going over there to do the terrible things that they're doing. The intense mass realization of that among the electorate and the constant backlash that people have been giving towards their elected officials, that is amazing. That is something that I'd never thought I was going to see in my lifetime, and is, in my opinion, the driving force of all of this. I don't think it's that I don't think that our politicians see Israel as more of a liability than it is an asset.
Yeah.
I think that they understand that it's a pariah state. I think they understand that it is a global catastrophe of an existence. They also understand that basically the entire rest of the world agrees that Israel is fucked up and that we are complicit in that, and we acknowledge that they know that it's fucked up, and we don't care. But the headlines that I have been seeing about the sentiment on Israel is largely they have finally lost the propaganda war. Like, Israel has been so successfully winning the propaganda war for decades, and they thought that they had enough clout to maintain that throughout this entire campaign, and that has not been the case, and they are running on empty. So like, they are just flailing. They are bombing everything they can. They are, Netanyahu's going to die soon. He's spent his entire life trying to wipe Iran off the map, and he wants that shot before he's gone. But they don't have that clout, and they're running on the goodwill of the senators in the states that continuously support them, and those senators need to be reelected. And those senators are basically weighing incumbency versus how bad it truly looks. Because as this footage is coming out, as the stuff about the humanitarian aid that's turning into killing fields comes out, the mass graves, the dead children, the body parts, it's so visceral. And there's a lot of disaffection in U.S. politics. But there comes a point where people are like, I cannot handle that. I don't understand why this is happening. Because again, I'm seeing my taxpayer dollars producing this footage, and I'm hungry. And that's where a lot of people are in the States right now. So at the end of the day, when people get hungry, that's when heads roll. And I think people are getting hungry.
And to wrap this up, just to anyone, I don't think anyone in our audience currently who's watching this is disagreeing, but in case anyone's watching this who's disagreeing with what we're saying about Israel on the YouTube video that comes out later, I just want to put this was from the New York Times, the article that I mentioned before. And this is from I'll just read this bit. And I do encourage you to read this if you have not. It's a good piece. But he says, my inescapable conclusion has become that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people. Having grown up in a Zionist home, lived the first half of my life in Israel, served in the IDF as a soldier and officer, and spent most of my career researching and writing on war crimes and the Holocaust, this was a painful conclusion to reach, and one that I resisted as long as I could. But I have been teaching classes on genocide for a quarter of a century. I can recognize one when I see one. This is not just my conclusion. A growing number of experts in genocide studies and international law have concluded that Israel's actions in Gaza can only be defined as genocide. So has Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Reporter for the West Bank and Gaza, and Amnesty International. South Africa has brought a genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. It's beyond question. And to me, it's like, you want to pull fucking teeth, split hairs about, is this a genocide, is it not? I don't really give a shit.
That's
if it's
insane
close
that
enough
anyone's taking that approach of an argument.
Yeah. If it is close, even we can disagree on the intent, whatever the fuck. If it is close enough that a former IDF officer who is a professional researcher of genocide at Brown fucking University says that it is a genocide, it's so far past the point of being acceptable that we shouldn't even be fucking having this argument. We can talk about whether it was a genocide or not in the fucking war crimes trials later. Right now, the violence has to stop and people need to be held accountable. We can argue about the semantics of it later. That's my personal fucking opinion. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. This is the end of The Left Wing. If you're watching this live on our 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. live stream on Thursdays, thank you for being here. If you're watching this in the YouTube video format, make sure to subscribe to know when the next one comes out, and come here and join us on Thursdays or Tuesdays for our Q&A show. If you've enjoyed our guest today, Endeavorance, can you tell our audience where they can find you?
You can find me in places. Endeavorance.camp is my homepage. I've got everything there. I am on Blue Sky, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, platforms, etc. If there's a social platform, I'm probably there. Just search Endeavorance, you'll find me.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. You've been excellent. We definitely need to have you on when we have TJ here as well, because I think the three of us would have excellent chemistry together. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully next time I see you, the Epstein Files will be released. The world will be in chaos, and Donald Trump will have a very sad day. Probably not going to happen, but until then, I'll see you later.
Bye.